Hello to everyone out there. I have to say that I am thrilled to see how many people are interested in building Hebrew skills. I've had an opportunity to hear from a number of you through the Learning How to Read the Hebrew Alphabet course, and it seems that we have people from all different kinds of backgrounds coming to this shared enterprise of learning some prayer book Hebrew from very, very different places. So let me just start with a few opening comments. First one, this may be shocking to hear, but in 7 weeks of lessons that are half hour to 45 minutes, you will not be able to read an entire Siddur and understand all of the prayers. It takes a little more time than that, okay? So I want to kind of lay out what I'm hoping that we can do. So the first thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is to remember why you're here, right? Why is it that you want to learn a little bit of prayer book Hebrew? Why is it that you want to be able to engage with the Hebrew text rather than transliteration? And I would say try as much as possible to kind of keep that in your mind as you get into the details of the texts. First thing. Second, here is a tip on how not to get overwhelmed. It is very common, I experienced it when I was younger, to look at people around me and to assume that they know so much. They can just run through the prayer book in Hebrew. There's no way at whatever stage of life that I'm in, if I wasn't raised that way, that I can possibly learn. It is not true. You can learn. I have seen many adult learners beginning with the Hebrew alphabet and engaging in Talmud study within 5 years. So you can do it. Learners of different styles. I think here is one of the tricks. Don't set up your expectations for failure. So learn little bits at a time and build gradually, build up the building blocks. So this is what we're going to be doing for the next 7 weeks. We're not going to cover tons of material, but what we're going to cover in detail. Some of the texts that we'll cover appear in Shabbat services, in high holiday services, and weekday services. So one of the things I wanted to do was to choose texts that no matter what movement you're associated with or not, no matter what kind of service you're going, these will appear pretty much in any kind of a setting. So some of the classics. We will then look at a few prayers that are specific to the high holidays, and we'll do that in a couple of weeks, especially, what's going on when we're doing this, and what are those words, what do they mean, and how to pronounce them. And I will let you in on a little secret. Most people that you might see around you in services who are running through the Hebrew do not understand 80% of what they're reading, okay? So one of the things to keep in mind is that when we see other people, we so often tend to kind of judge ourselves relative to other people. You can become fluent in reading through and knowing the words or knowing the songs, the nusach, the tunes, but not necessarily understand what everything means. And for some people that's okay because it's more of almost like a meditative practice, right? These kind of continuing mantras. So please don't feel that you've got a huge mountain to climb. All you need to do is take the next step from where you are. All right, last piece of introduction. And Julie and I will give you a little more information about that at the end of this session. there's no way that I can provide you with enough material in half hour, 35, 40 minutes for your learning to be meaningful. So we are going to send you a link to a place, to a site. Obviously, this is free, to a site where you can get recordings of the prayers read very, very slowly, and then read at a slightly faster pace so that you can practice your own reading. I'll also give you a few key vocabulary words and a few exercises so that you have something to do during the week in addition to perhaps watching this presentation again. All right, so with that, I am going to jump right into it. Again, we're going to start today with a prayer called Ein Kamocha. It is the very first prayer that is recited as you move into the Torah service. So on holidays, on Shabbat, on certain weekdays, there's a Torah service. You may have encountered it. Again, we're coming from all different kinds of places. So this may be very common for you. This may be new for you. But every time services start, they start with a few lines of text. So I am going to share a little of my screen to show you that text. And my hope is that by the end of our session today, we will have a sense of how to read it and how to help you remember some key terms. So a little bit of Hebrew grammar and a little bit of practice reading. So I am going to share my screen. And okay. All right, I'm going to share and then I will come back from the sharing so that I can see faces again. All right, so Hebrew for the high holidays. Here's our first step. There is this prayer again. This will always get us, this will always kind of begin a prayer, a Torah service. And what I want you to note is that first I'm going to read through this, and then we're going to talk about some things that you can find in this prayer that hopefully will help you understand what's going on, and even more importantly, learn to read the words comfortably. So first, a read through. And again, the recorded read-throughs that I have for you on the audio will move through much slower. So, Ein Kamocha va'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha. And some of you may know a tune. Ein Kamocha va'Elohim Adonai. So it's that one. So ve'ein kema'asecha. Then Malchutecha Malchut Kol Olamim Umemshaltecha Bechol Dor Vador. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimloch Leolam Va'ed. Adonai Oz Le'amo Yiten, Adonai Yevarech Et Amo Vashalom. And then it's usually after this that people that the Torahs are taken out, and we begin with the Shema and then the procession of the Torah before the reading. Okay, now, all right. So I want to start first with a very, very small, minor matter, the divine name, God's name. If you notice here on the right side, there are two different words. I'm going to start here at the bottom with the word Elohim. Elohim. Elohim is the generic name for God. So when you are reading a translation and you see the word God, The Hebrew that lies behind that is probably Elohim. Now, for those of you who have some Hebrew grammar, you may notice that Elohim looks like it's a plural word. This continues to be a scholarly kind of crux. We don't know why it's this form. But 99% of the time, when you see Elohim in the Bible or in a prayer book, it's going to be God. Now, the word above, Yud, He, Vav, He, these 4 letters are the actual divine name, right? So I'm a teacher, my name is Tamar, right? So that's kind of like Elohim is God. Yud, He, Vav, He is the actual name of God. In most Jewish traditions, we don't pronounce that. And so there are a number of different of traditions of what we do when we see Yud, He, Vav, He. I would say that the most common, and I'm not pushing for any particular kind of practice, but the most common practice is that when you see Yud, He, Vav, He, you actually say Adonai. Right, so you may hear, that might be a familiar word for you, Adonai, which literally means my Lord. In modern Hebrew, Adon is used for Mr. So-and-so. Now, one thing that you will find, and this depends, different Sidurim and Machzorim, different prayer books and prayer books for the high holidays will have their own individual practices. But one thing that you will find quite often is that the divine name, Yud, He, Vav, He, has these vowels under it. So why would you put vowels under something that you're not supposed to pronounce? And how would you pronounce this anyway? Because you just have like a Y here and a Va here. And so here's what's going on. The rabbis, at some point, once the text became canonized, the rabbis said that, they realized they could no longer change the text of the canonical books, of books that were becoming authoritative. And so what they did is they put in the vowels that are actually the vowels of Adonai. So if you notice here, under this aleph, we have this combination vowel, the shva, which is silent. And I'll just tell you that anytime you see, this is a regular shva, which is silent or makes just an sound. Anytime you see one of these compound, where you have another vowel sound and the shva, this is actually a shva. It's just that certain letters, like guttural letters, like the aleph, are hard to pronounce if you have an aleph that is silent and then you have a vowel that is silent. It's kind of hard to make a sound, unless you're like, sounds like you're choking on candy or something like that. So, the vowel under the aleph is truly a shva with a little helping sound for the aleph. And so here is our shva. And Adonai here ends with a kamatz. And so a kamatz is put here. So in other words, the written text has the divine name, but the vowels tell us that we should actually pronounce it as if we had this word in front of us. Okay? I'm sorry, I went back. Okay. Now, there are a number of different conventions, and so in a lot of Sidurim, you will also see this shortened to just a Yud Yud, or sometimes a Yud with the Shva and a Yud with the Aleph. Okay, so I'm going to just stop sharing for a second, and just to help you realize that, again, there will be different conventions. Sometimes you'll see 2 Yuds, sometimes you'll see Yud, He, Vav, He. The most common convention is to say Adonai. The vowels that go with Yud, He, Vav, He are kind of signaling that the rabbis want us to say that. There are other people who do not feel comfortable saying Adonai and will say Hashem, just the name. There are people kind of on another side that don't want to say Adonai because they're trying to get away from gendered language and might say something like Yah, right? Or another sound, another term that represents the divine name, but is not necessarily Adonai, my Lord. Okay, now let's get back to the actual text. Now, if we come back, I'm sorry, why does not, okay. If we come back to our Ein Kamocha, I want you to notice how often we have God here. So here's our Elohim, and then you can see we have Adonai, 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 Adonai. Now, why am I telling this to you? I am telling this to you because there are a lot of Adonais here. And once you've got those, you're already reading, a good 20% of this text. One of the interesting things about this Elohim is this is one of the 1% where Elohim here does not mean God, capital G, but means gods, because it begins with Ein Kamocha. There is none Kamocha like you, Va Elohim, among the gods. So we could get into another conversation about, isn't Judaism monotheistic? This piece is an excerpt from biblical times where there was not necessarily monotheism. The claim here is our God is the best God. There is no God who compares with the God Adonai. So just take a moment to kind of take in how often the name of God comes up. Okay, now coming back, so you'll see Adonai, and hopefully you'll remember how to pronounce that. Another thing that I just want to point out is you'll see a number of words that end with this cha. This letter is the chaf sofit, plus this a kamatz vowel. Cha is here on kema'aseh cha, malchutecha, umemshaltecha. Whenever you see cha, it means your, masculine. So if you get to know what the word means and you see cha after that, attached onto the word, like malchut means kingdom. So malchutecha, your kingdom. And here all the yours are referring to God. All right, next little piece. In Hebrew, one of the really fun things about Hebrew, one of the reasons I love this language, is that it's all built upon a three-letter root system. So here, for example, we have 3 letters. We have a mem, we have a lamed, and we have a chaf. And with these 3 letters, we can make a bunch of words. So these 3 letters are connected to the idea of kingship. So watch what happens when you begin to associate these 3 letters with a general concept. Now with malach, if you put these vowels, segol, segol, now you've made a noun, melech, king. If you put in this vowel pattern, now it's a past tense, he ruled. If, coming down here to the bottom right, if you put a prefix yud, again, change the vowel pattern, it means he will rule. Here again is our mem lamed chaf plus ut. Ut tends to make an abstract noun. So melech is king, malchut is kingdom. And then as I pointed out just before, malchut is the same word, but with a suffix that means your. Malchutecha. So why is something like this helpful? Well, again, if we come back to our basic Ein Kamocha, you can see that the same root is used in several different places. So these are not separate vocabulary words that you have to memorize independently. So here, the first one, Malchutecha, is going to be your kingdom. Malchut, kingdom. Melech, king. Malach, past tense, he rules. And Yimloch, he will rule. So one of the things that I'm going to have for you on the supplementary materials is you'll have this text, again, where I'm reading at 2 different points. Then I'm going to give you a vocabulary list with 7 words that are in here that are the most common words that you'll see pretty frequently in Siddur texts. And I'll ask you to think a little bit about, as you're reading through, even if you can't translate every word yet, you can begin to notice little pieces. There is none like you among the gods, O Adonai. The Ein, and there is none, and again, this will be a vocabulary word for you, and you can even quiz yourself with one of the sheets. The Ein Kema'asecha, and there is not any like deed or action like you, like nothing has been done. Malchutecha, your kingdom is Malchut Kol Olamim, is the kingdom of the entire world. Umem shaltecha, again cha, and your dominion, bechol dor vador. Dor vador is in the Passover Haggadah, is for all generations. Then Adonai is king. Adonai has ruled. Adonai will rule, le'olam va'ed. These words together mean forever. And then finally, Adonai owes le'amo yiten. God, yiten, will give strength, owes, to his people. And is a vocabulary word for this week. Yisrael, so to his people. Adonai Yevarech, some of you may be familiar with this word from Baruch. Adonai will bless his people with peace. Okay. Now we'll take time for questions and reviewing anything, and Julie will give you the an easier link. But basically where you're going to be sent for more materials is to my Beit Midrash. And if you just scroll down these featured courses, there's one that says specifically, Hebrew for the high holidays. Just sign into that and you'll have different kinds of exercises that we can that you can go through, and there are also places at the bottom of each of those exercises where you can ask questions, and I will check that a few times during the course of the week and help you out if I can do so. So again, just to summarize, the Ein Kamocha prayer is one that you will encounter no matter what kind of Judaism you're experiencing at the very beginning of any Torah service. You will already know a number of the words, because anything that has to do with melech, kingdom or kingship, you will now know, oh, here it's like a verb, here it's a noun, here it's an abstract noun. You'll appreciate how often you get Adonai, or whatever word you want to use to express the divine name. And keep in mind that anytime you come across a word that has cha at the end, that it is meaning you're something, right? And over time, we'll build up vocabulary. So when you see cha, you'll be able to know, okay, I'm not sure what this word means yet, but I know that it's your something. And hopefully this is what we will continue to do this week. For these 7 weeks, is slowly start building up different pieces, different clues, rather than learning the full verbal paradigm. There are certain things that you can know. Like another thing that we'll go into in more detail next week is if you see a yud at the beginning of the vowel, a beginning of a verb, it means it's a future tense and it's masculine singular, he something. So frankly, you can go back to Ein Kamocha and look for words apart from Adonai that begin with yud. And you will know that those are future, that he will something. Yivarech, he will bless. Yiten, he will give. Yimloch, he will rule. Okay, so let me pause there. This is our first week, and so I wanted to get a sense of where people are at, what will be most useful, and I think spending a little extra time on questions this week will help me to then adjust what it is that we are doing. Just as a heads up, we're going to do the first paragraph of the Amidah, the prayer when everyone stands up, that opening part that is often recited or sung aloud before people go off into their own kind of silent reading. We'll be doing a little bit of the Shema. We'll be doing some basic blessings. And I'm even going to throw in a Hanukkah blessing so that you can practice reading that, because before we know it, we'll be at Hanukkah. And then from the high holidays, a little bit from Kol Nidre, the famous beginning to Yom Kippur, the Al Chet, which is for the evils that I've done about this, for the evils that I've done about this, where we then plead to God for forgiveness. And then finally the Vidui, which is the list of I've done this and this and this, and we'll look at some of these different terms. So that is going to be my starting point. I can go on, but I want to get a sense of where people are at. And Julie, if you see some questions that might be useful for folks.
Great. So I saw one Hebrew question so far. If folks have other questions about the Hebrew, please send them to me. And then there's a couple of logistical questions as well. We'll leave those for the end. So the first question is, does a yud at the beginning of a word always indicate future tense?
Great question. It does not always indicate future tense. A yud could be just the first letter of a 3-letter root. So it could be like the word for a child is yeled. So there, the yud is not going to tell you that it's future. But there are particular vowel patterns that can help you distinguish between those.
Okay, and another question. Sometimes Elohim is used for God and sometimes the divine name is used. What's the difference between those names?
Great. So I can answer that in a number of different ways. Part of it has to do with differing theologies in our Tanakh, in our Torah. So in antiquity, there were different opinions about how often, who, under what circumstances, the actual divine name could be used. And so there was a school of thought in antiquity among those who kind of redacted the Torah, who believed that no one knew God's name that had not been revealed to anyone until Moses. That Moses in Exodus chapter 6, the first couple of verses, it's the first time where basically God says to Moses, Shmi Adonai. Hi, nice to meet you. Shmi, my name is Adonai. And the text actually says, and the forefathers, and I like to think foremothers are included, lo nodati lahem. I never let them know. I never let them know what the divine name is. But then there are other opinions in Torah that say that as early as before the flood, that God's name was revealed to all of humanity. So to some extent, it has to do with who was editing a particular text, and if they felt that the use of the divine name was appropriate or not. And then there are some literary explanations. Some people will argue that if you're looking at a text and it has both Elohim and Adonai mixed into it, that Elohim sometimes refers to more the God of Din, of judgment, and that Adonai, the divine name, refers more to the God of compassion. And then there are a number of different theories. But one of the things that's interesting is that because our translations usually say Lord, 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 we lose the original sense that we weren't saying, that the original text wasn't saying Lord. That's the God part, right? The God is the impersonal, right, titulary address. And Yud He Vav He is actually the name of God, right? So it's saying, there, who is among you, among the gods, O Bob? Right? There's a much more personal connection, I think, when we just keep in mind that when we see that Yud Yud or Yud He Vav He, it's the actual divine name, even though we have no idea how it was pronounced. And for most Jews, at least, the practice is not to try to pronounce it.
Another couple of questions about God's name. Why is it sometimes abbreviated Yud Yud?
So this just becomes an editorial. This is just editorial and different Sidurim. In the Bible, it's Yud He Vav He. You never get the Yud Yud. But Yud Yud became just kind of an abbreviation. And so a number of different Sidurim, depending on the editorial committees, will make decisions about whether to just put the Yud Yud in or whether to put all four letters in.
Isn't there a thought that Elohim was an earlier name for God used in Genesis and that Adonai came later?
I think that that one does not predate the other, at least within Jewish tradition and the biblical traditions. Just because Elohim is presented in the first chapter of Genesis and Adonai in the second does not necessarily mean that Genesis 1 is chronologically earlier than Genesis 2, which is a whole other conversation that we could have in a non-Hebrew, but more kind of biblical ideas, of course.
Okay. Any other questions about the Hebrew? And if not, there are a few logistical questions. The first is your PowerPoint. Does that appear in your slideshow? Does that appear in that link for?
I had not put it on there, but I will.
Okay, great.
I'll add it on this evening, so that'll be another resource in there.
Great, thank you. And to those that were asking, this session and all the sessions will be recorded, and we will send you the link to the recording tomorrow in an email from My Jewish Learning. So look out for that. They will all live on My Jewish Learning's YouTube channel. If you have trouble finding it, you can email me, julie@myjewishlearning.com. Another couple of questions. Should we learn vowels?
All right. So it depends on why you want to learn Hebrew. If you want to get to the place where you can translate more, right? So if your focus is on reading the text and becoming comfortable reading it aloud so that you can participate in services, then you just need the vowels enough to help you know how to pronounce the word. If you are interested in moving more into actually being able to translate, then I would say you do want to pay attention to the vowels, because the vowels are going to be really, really important clues. As I showed you before with the root, melech, because I see I know it's a noun, and I know it's going to be king. When I see malach, then I know that it's a past tense verb from that root. And so one of the things that might be a next step when you complete this kind of course in your learning is learning some of these things a little more systematically. But the vowels can be very, very important in cluing you into whether something is past or present, whether it's a noun or a verb. You don't necessarily have to know the names of them unless you want to understand what a teacher is saying.
So a follow-up question to that, why are there no vowels in the Torah? How do I sound out the words without the vowels?
Okay, so most people who chant Torah, even if you're a first-time chanter, have practiced it with the vowels so many times that you've essentially memorized it. And if not 100% memorized it, it's enough that when you see the consonants, they're enough of a reminder of what that word is. And that, frankly, is the easiest part of chanting Torah, making the switch from the vowels to the Torah scroll. The Torah scroll does not have vowels because originally the Torah was not written with any vowels. The vowels were introduced by a group of rabbis called the Masoretes, and they operated from about 600 to 1000 CE in the Common Era. And they were concerned that as the Jewish community began to disperse and move more into Egypt and Babylonia and places in Europe, and in Israel, they wanted to ensure that everyone was continuing to pronounce everything in the same way. And so they developed a system to ensure, basically it's like a conservative move, but a system to ensure that everyone was reading and interpreting the text in the same way.
One more question, which is there an online trope trainer to trope sounding out how the words are chanted in the Torah to learn Hebrew and the melodies that you recommend?
Well, I'm not sure that I can give an objective answer, because on my Kamionkowski Beit Midrash, I do have a course on how to learn to chant, where I go through and teach each of those things. I know that there is software, my Torah trainer something. I think it's a few $100s for that, and I know a number of people use that. And then you can probably find things on YouTube.